Off-road guy here today, and I'm gonna be telling a story today about, if you guys remember from my previous video, my wife's power wagon with the AAV prospector kit on it. And if you remember, I had mentioned that I was going to do a video on the winch. Well, I've gone through the winch, and so I would show you some text, but as you'll see as the story develops, that it's more of a story than it is much technical on this part. So if you want to see watching this for technical, then sorry, this is not going to be a good video for you. I'll start from the beginning. We found this truck on Auto Trader. My wife said she liked it, so we told the dealership we needed to have a mechanic look at it since it was in New Hampshire, and I'd be flying to New Hampshire and driving it over 5,000 miles to where we live. So we had a mechanic take a look at it there in New Hampshire, and he did a good job for the most part. Only thing is, I asked him if the winch worked, because in the pictures you could see that the winch line was threaded through see if you look at the bumper there, the two holes surrounding the license plate, the steel winch line was threaded through there a couple times for some reason. It was really odd. And when I asked him if the winch worked, he said, well, that's the only thing he didn't check, was whether the winch worked. I flew into New Hampshire on Thanksgiving Day late, and the dealer was nice enough to send an Uber for me and open up and let us finish up business of buying the truck and letting me get the keys, which was very quick because we had done most everything, all the paperwork and stuff over the phone and such. And so I drove to a hotel room. So I got up early in the morning to see what was going on with the winch and get the winch line. Also, the winch line was kind of a rat's nest on the spool, so I wanted to straighten it up a little bit. And I didn't want to go 5,000 miles with the winch line threaded through the bumper. Undid it from the bumper, started pulling out, and I was going to fix some of the rat nest before I started spooling it back up. And at which point I decided I wanted to hook up the remote. I went to winch out, and I had the engine running, just keep the battery level up while I was using the winch. Not that it was going to be a huge load or anything. Well, as soon as I hit the button, the engine about stalled. It and you could hear all the solenoids clicking and like they were working and everything. But the winch was not turning. So I tried it a couple more times and looked at some of the wiring, seeing if there was something going on. And it was early in the morning and I didn't have time to play with it. So I'm like, well, screw it. And I'd brought some tools along, so I started just yanking the cable right off the spool and undid the little set screw off the cable, then put it back in the winch, this little set screw, and basically pulled the whole winch cable around the back and started spooling up in the back of the bed. At which time I drove home at that point. After that, we decided, I told the wife, and she's like, well, it's under warranty. So we went, and along the way we found a couple other issues with it. Just small stuff, like the window seals were a little beat up. For a truck that had, well, at the point when I got home, it had about 25,000 miles on it. But we took it to the Dodge dealer and told them all the problems that were on with it, and they came back to us and said, well, the winch isn't under warranty. The rest of the truck is, but the winch isn't. And it would cost us an hour of labor to have it troubleshooted. And so my wife decided to go for it, and then she went to the service manager and was like, why isn't this under warranty? This winch came brand new with this truck. And so they ended up making a deal with us that they'd replace the winch, but they would not install the winch. Because it's technically Dodge does not warranty the worn winch, I guess. We got a brand new winch for $160. And I was okay with it because, shit, I'll take the old one and whatever's wrong with it, I could fix it. Not a big deal. I know that winch hasn't probably been used barely at all. So I'm like, screw it. We got a brand new winch in the garage. I pulled the old one out and put it on the bench and started troubleshooting it. Weird part is I couldn't find much wrong with it. eventually, when I put the other one, I was going to start swapping the solenoids from the new winch onto the old winch to just, and in doing so, I started taking parts off the new winch, and I'm like, wait. So I took the cover off the old winch when it was on the truck, undid the positive and negative cable off the solenoids. And the new winch, I pulled the positive cable off, and I'm like, wait, where's the negative cable? Because I didn't think much about it at the time. And I looked for the negative cable, because the new winch came with the power cables all hooked up and ready to, be installed onto a truck. And found out the negative cable was attached to the motor, and I thought about, hey, the Warren winch on my Dodge 3500, yeah, it's the same. The negative cable is hooked directly to the motor, bolted right to the motor of the winch. So I'm like, no way, because the negative cable they had hooked to the solenoid, and I'm thinking about, I'm like, that doesn't seem right at all. So I hooked all the solenoids back and hooked it all back up with the old parts. And I found a threaded hole in the motor. So I'm like, I bet that's where the negative cable is supposed to go. So after hooking it all up properly, I tested it, and the old winch worked fine. The person who installed the AEV bumper, or the previous owner, I'm not sure who, just didn't hook up the old winch right, and then the mechanics at the Dodge dealership didn't really bother. They probably just plugged the remote in and figured, yep, it's not working, get a new one, replace the whole thing. I just find the whole thing funny. So the Dodge dealer didn't even bother troubleshooting it at all, because if they would have did a little bit of troubleshooting. See, I figured it was hooked up right, and when unhooking it, and I didn't think much about it. But when I I couldn't find any problems with it, and it seemed like it was working okay. The old winch, we decided to just leave the old winch on it, because I doubt it's probably been used exactly once, I'm guessing. And I bet that was the reason why it was threaded through the bumper holes. I just thought that was a funny story. Figured I'd share it with you and see if you guys like it. I hope you enjoyed this story. Follow me on Facebook and YouTube. Thanks. Bye.